Step inside a 1960s garage, the air heavy with gasoline and solvent. Red toolboxes lined against oil-stained walls, a Bel Air or Galaxie idling overhead. Here, you survived on pure skill, no computers, just hands, ears, and intuition. Yet behind this golden age of mechanical mastery lurked dangers most never saw coming. What was it really like to live and work under these hoods? Hot oil clings to the air, mixing with the sharp tang of gasoline and the sting of solvent from the part's washer in the corner. Every breath carries a layer of exhaust and old gear lube, settling into your clothes and skin before the first job even starts. The concrete floor is cold and stained, marked by drips and spills from years of repairs. Somewhere in the background, a compressor kicks on with a low rumble, followed by the staccato chatter of a pneumatic wrench. Still a novelty in some shops, but already changing the rhythm of the day. Mostly, it's the sound of hand tools, the steady click of a ratchet, a breaker bar groaning against a stubborn bolt, the metallic clatter of sockets tossed onto a steel bench. Sometimes there is the acrid smoke of a burning clutch, or the sweet, faintly rotten whiff of coolant leaking from a tired hose. Radios tuned to AM stations cut through the noise, voices and music bouncing off cinder block walls. In older shops, you work over a grease pit, crawling beneath cars as the smells and sounds close in. The world above reduced to the thud of footsteps and the muffled hiss of an engine idling overhead. Red Craftsman toolboxes lined the walls, drawers partly open and crowded with socket sets, box-end wrenches and screwdrivers worn smooth from years of use. Pegboards hung above the main workbench, each tool's outline painted in faded white so you could spot what was missing at a glance. Hammers, pliers, and specialty pullers hung from hooks, each with its own place. On the bench, a heavy steel vise waited for the next stubborn part, next to a grinder that sent sparks flying when you needed to clean up a bolt or shape a bracket. Coffee cans and baby food jars held a jumble of bolts, cotter pins, and washers, sorted by feel more than by label. The parts washer sat nearby, its solvent giving off a sharp chemical bite as you dipped greasy parts and watched the grime melt away. Fender covers, heavy canvas or old towels, were always draped over the cars, protecting paint from dropped tools and dirty hands. Every mechanic had their own rhythm for laying out sockets and ratchets on those covers, ready to grab without breaking stride. The logic was simple. If you had to walk across the bay to find a tool, you were wasting time. In a good shop, you always knew where everything belonged. Chevy Bel Airs rolled in with their broad hoods and chrome trim, sharing space with Ford Galaxies, Plymouth Valiants, and Dodge Darts. These were the cars that kept shops busy, full-size sedans and compact workhorses, all built with rear-wheel drive and big open-engine bays. Under the hood, you would find inline sixes or the legendary small-block V8s, engines with room to swing 2 elbows and drop a wrench without losing it forever. Everything was mechanical. Carburetors feeding air and fuel, mechanical fuel pumps drawing gas from the tank, distributors with points and condensers firing the spark. No computers, no sensors, just wires and moving parts. Drum brakes set at all 4 corners, their linings ready to coat everything in fine dust by the time you pulled the wheels. These cars demanded hands-on work. Starter motors, fuel pumps, and distributors were all within reach. Nothing hidden behind plastic covers or tangled in electronics. For a mechanic, the engine bay was a familiar landscape. every bolt and bracket mapped out through repetition and muscle memory. A mechanic slides behind the wheel, listening for the first cough of the starter, the way the idle stumbles or smooths out. Out on the road, every vibration comes through the seat, an engine miss, a faint knock under load, a hesitation when you tip into the throttle. Back in the bay, the real work begins. You pull a spark plug, roll it in your fingers, and read its story. Tan and dry means you are close. Black and sooty means too rich or weak spark. Oily means maybe worn rings. Plug color was your first report card. Next comes the dwell meter clipped to the distributor, reading the angle of the points as the engine turns. Too wide a gap and the dwell drops, too tight and it climbs. Every degree matters. Timing light in hand, you watch the chalk mark flash on the balancer, nudging the distributor until it lines up just right. A vacuum gauge wavers as you adjust the idle mixture, the needle telling you if a valve is leaking or a gasket is sucking air. Joe Marino, who started wrenching in Detroit in 1962, put it simply, if you could not diagnose it by ear and nose, you had no business under the hood. Gauges and meters confirmed what your senses already knew. In the 60s, speed counted. Flat rate pay meant every minute lost to guesswork cost you real money. The best mechanics trusted their hunches but proved them with numbers, turning every test drive and tune-up into a quiet contest between experience and the machine. Tune-ups kept the doors open. Every 6,000 miles, another Chevy or Ford rolled in for the same ritual. Fresh spark plugs, new points and condenser, cap and rotor checked for cracks and carbon tracks. Feeler gauges set the point gap, a dwell meter confirmed it, and a timing light brought the idle into line. Belts and hoses got a once-over, and the air filter was swapped if it looked choked with dust. Carburetors needed regular attention. You pulled the carburetor from the intake, laid out the springs and jets on a fender cover, and soaked the body in solvent until the varnish let go. A rebuild kit meant new gaskets, a needle, and seat, and maybe an accelerator pump if the old one had gone soft. Once reassembled, you dialed in the idle mixture, screw by ear, watching the vacuum gauge for a steady needle. Some days a brake job or a clutch replacement landed on your rack, but tune-ups and carburetor rebuilds were the bread and butter. For regulars, the line between business and favor blurred. Quick fixes or little extras sometimes settled with a handshake and a six-pack left by the toolbox. Every job, big or small, added up to the week's pay, each one a step in the cycle that kept the shop humming and the lights on. A skilled mechanic in the 1960s could expect to earn between $2 and $3.50 an hour. That was enough to support a family and keep a roof overhead, but it did not leave much for extras. In many shops, especially dealerships and growing service chains, flat rate pay determined how much you actually took home. The shop assigned a set number of hours to each job based on labor guides or factory manuals. If the book said a brake job paid 1.5 hours, you were paid for 1.5 hours, whether you finished in 1 hour or fought rusted bolts for 3 hours. The faster you worked, the more you could flag in a day, but every snag or misdiagnosis cut into your earnings. Some mechanics hustled to stack 10 or 12 flat-rate hours into an 8-hour shift, while others found themselves eating time on stubborn repairs. Union shops, mostly at dealerships, offered steadier wages and better benefits, but independents sometimes paid a bit more for speed or loyalty. It was a system that rewarded experience and hustle, but it also kept pressure high. As one mechanic from Chicago remembered, you learned to work quick or you did not last long. Most mechanics in the 60s started at the bottom, working as lube techs, changing oil, rotating tires, sweeping floors, and watching every move the older guys made. High school vocational programs were strong, with auto shop classes teaching the basics of ignition, carburation, and brakes on real engines. For others, the Army or Navy provided a crash course in troubleshooting, preventive maintenance, and heavy vehicle repair. Manuals like Chilton and Motors were close at hand, but the real education came from apprenticeship, learning by doing, and picking up tricks from veterans who had spent years under hoods. Skill was handed down, one job at a time. Grease under the fingernails was not just a side effect, it was a badge of honor. Coveralls carried the shop name stitched above the pocket, and a rag hung from nearly every belt. The morning started with a pot of coffee strong enough to cut through the smell of oil, and an ashtray never sat empty for long. Between jobs, mechanics leaned against fenders, swapping stories about weekend drag races or the quirks of a customer's old Plymouth. The master mechanic's bay was sacred ground. His words settled arguments about timing or carburetor tricks. Respect was earned through skill, speed, and the quiet confidence that came from solving problems no manual could teach. Clouds of asbestos dust hung in the air with every brake job, drifting through the bay as mechanics blew out drums without a second thought. Solvent stung your hands, and gasoline washed away the grease until your skin cracked. By the late 60s, California's smog rules and the first Volkswagen Beetles forced shops to buy metric wrenches and learn new systems. The job was changing, and the risks, once invisible, were starting to catch up. Hands-on skill like that, built on feel, not software, grows rarer every year. As cars become rolling computers, the mechanic's intuition fades from the trade. Yet every classic engine running today is proof. Real craftsmanship leaves fingerprints long after the grease is gone. Share your own memories below.